Think the Victorian era was all romance, candlelight, and elegant manners? Think again. Beneath the polished shoes, handwritten love notes, and perfectly arranged roses was a world full of secrets, where women were silenced, control was disguised as tradition, and love came with rules you wouldn't believe. This isn't history the way they taught it in school. It's what was whispered behind closed doors, and what some women were forced to do just to survive. Interested in stories that dig into the truth behind the gloss? Hit subscribe. It gets darker from here. Falling in love in the Victorian era? It wasn't about connection or chemistry. It was about reputation, control, and following a strict social script, one that didn't leave much room for actual feelings. There was no such thing as dating. You couldn't flirt, couldn't be alone together, couldn't even speak without a formal introduction. Every step, every glance, every letter was watched and judged. For women, everything hinged on appearing proper. One wrong move could ruin your entire future. For wealthy girls, a new dress and a hair updo weren't just about fashion, they were signals. She was ready to marry. Her social debut, called The Season, meant being paraded through dinners, dances, and events, all carefully curated chances to be noticed by a suitable man. And by suitable, we mean rich and respectable. Middle-class girls did it too, just with less glamour. Modest clothes, quieter parties, and an endless string of respectable visits. But make no mistake, it was still a performance, and the end goal was always marriage. Everything was supervised. A chaperone was required for walks, conversations, even written notes, unless the couple was already engaged. A girl couldn't reach out. She could only react, and even then, only within the limits of what society allowed. And yet, love still happened. People still found ways. A shared look across a ballroom, fingers brushing while stepping over a puddle. A letter folded carefully, hidden in a book. Romance didn't disappear. It just had to get creative, dangerous, quiet, careful. Because in the Victorian world, falling in love wasn't just risky, it could cost you everything. Victorian women weren't allowed to flirt. Not really. A wink? Too forward. A whisper? Scandalous. A touch? Absolutely not. One wrong move and your reputation, your entire life, could be destroyed. So they adapted. And they did it with fans. You've seen them, delicate lace fans, fluttering in the hands of women at crowded ballroom dances. But in the Victorian era, those fans weren't just for show. They were tools, signals, a secret code hiding in plain sight. This wasn't cute or quirky. It was survival disguised as elegance. Victorian weddings looked romantic on the outside. White dresses, handwritten vows, soft lighting. But peel back the lace and you'll find something much colder underneath. Contracts, negotiations, and financial strategy. Marriage wasn't a love story, it was a business deal. Many marriages were arranged before the couple even met. The goal wasn't connection or compatibility, it was land, titles, influence, money. So while some young women got to flutter their fans and steal glances at dances, others were simply handed over like property. And once the papers were signed, the real story and the real silence began. The moment she said, "I do," the law erased her. Literally. Under this legal doctrine, a married woman's identity didn't just change, it disappeared. Everything she had, and everything she was, now belonged to her husband. He could beat her, lock her inside, spend every cent she brought into the marriage. And the law would shrug. In 1765, an English judge wrote, "By marriage, the very being or legal existence of a woman is suspended." That wasn't a metaphor. That was legal reality. You didn't exist. Not really, not to the system. While women were told to be sweet, innocent, and untouched, men were given the opposite script. They were expected to be bold, experienced, even sexually adventurous. But if a woman dared to cross that invisible line, she became a fallen woman, shamed, excluded, discarded. Society turned its back. Sometimes even her own family did. Middle and upper-class women were expected to guard their virtue at all costs. Meanwhile, working-class women, especially those forced into sex work, were judged harshly by the same society that relied on their silence. Victorian society loved to blame sex workers for the spread of disease. Men would sleep around with mistresses, with prostitutes, and then bring syphilis or gonorrhea back into the marriage bed. Their wives, women who had done everything right, suddenly found themselves sick, infertile, or worse. Many lost pregnancies. Some gave birth to sick or dying children. Others died without ever learning the truth. Why? Because doctors, often pressured by husbands, refused to tell them. Women were told they had a female complaint. They were never told the actual cause was an infection they never chose. A husband could hit, threaten, lock his wife inside the house, and the law wouldn't blink. Neighbors might hear the screams, family might suspect, but everyone stayed quiet because domestic abuse wasn't considered illegal. It was considered personal. And for the woman? There were no shelters, no hotline, no safe way out. Some found a way to speak, even if no one was listening. They kept diaries, hidden in drawers or beneath floorboards. These weren't romantic musings, they were raw, desperate confessions. And sometimes, when those diaries were found, they were used in court, not to protect the women, but to shame them. Dismissed as hysterical, labeled as unstable. The truth was in their hands, but the world still chose not to believe them. Why didn't Victorian women just leave? That's the question we ask today, and the answer is brutally simple. They couldn't. A man could divorce his wife for adultery. A woman had to prove adultery, plus cruelty, desertion, incest, or worse. And even if she succeeded, she'd likely lose everything. Her reputation, her money, her children. Divorce wasn't just a legal risk, it was social suicide. For the women who couldn't speak out, couldn't leave, and couldn't take it anymore, some made a terrifying choice. They poisoned their husbands. It was the only kind of power many women had left. In court, these cases blurred the line between villain and victim. Because when the law gives you no voice, no help, no escape, sometimes a spoonful of something deadly is the only answer left. So what do we do with all of this? The fan flirting, the forced silence, the poisoned tea, the painful, hidden reality behind the polished surface of Victorian marriage. It would be easy to leave it in the past, to say, that was then. But here's the thing, control doesn't always disappear, it just changes shape. The laws may have shifted, the corsets may be gone, but the pressure, the silence, the unequal expectations, they haven't vanished. They've just evolved. Women today are still judged for speaking out, still blamed for their own pain, still told to stay quiet, to stay polite, to not make a scene. Behind every drawing room secret and every unopened diary was a woman who was never supposed to tell her story. Now we've opened that door. So ask yourself, if this was hidden for so long, what else still is?